Alrighty, guys. Making a lot of content tonight. That's the way it goes sometimes. Alright. So Overwatch 2's Fallout. Let's take a peek here. Let's get Charles in here to read for us.
Google Cloud.
Yeah. See, so a bunch of shit going wrong with Overwatch 2. They're talking about basically PvE not existing, which, to be perfectly honest, I'd never have played Overwatch 2. Jesus Christ. I've never played Overwatch 2 for PvE content, so not really that big of a deal to me. And I think there's a lot of people that haven't. It's just a general outrage because people are just angry. Just kind of the way it goes. They feel cheated out of something, and this is what they have. So, yeah. Kind of crazy. I don't know. We'll see how this goes, but basically this is just going to be an apology piece for what's going on right now, and people trying to say, nuh-uh. There's like I'm guessing this is going to address the work from home thing, and you can say what you want. People like to think that work from home works. It doesn't, and the reason for that is because productivity tanks, and you could go, no, it doesn't. But then stuff doesn't get done, and that's productivity that tanks. So I have a bunch of people, like there's people you can, like articles you can read. I've had arguments with the people online. They're like, no, it doesn't. It's not the same for every industry. Not everyone is good at working from home. If you work in IT, for instance, you might be a lot better at working from home than other people. It depends on what you do for a living and what part of the industry as a whole in the world that you are part of. Not everyone is good at work from home. That's just the way it is. And some people really need to have the transition of going to work and then getting into the office to set the mood for them, or have someone that's breathing down their neck, or be on the same page because they were able to articulate with someone in real life. And you go, no, you don't need to do that. You can just do that from a computer. It's not the same. Just like if you've taken any classes, you went to college, you took any classes. If you take online courses, they're very different than if you take a real life course. And you go, no, they're the same thing. Like they're giving you the same information. It's not. It definitely isn't. If you've done online learning, it's not the same thing. Some people are good at it and some people aren't. It's different. There's tons and tons of different ways that people learn. It's the same way that people interact, and they need to have environmental or stimuli that actually interact with them that it makes them, act the way that they do. So at the end of the day, the proof is in the pudding, which is what we don't get in Overwatch is basically a proof of what they've been doing with their time or what's been happening. We'll take a peek at maybe this will change things, but I suspect this is just going to be a giant apology piece, and that's going to be it. We'll take a peek, though.
Hey all, it's been an emotional week in the world of Overwatch. A few days ago, we talked about our change in approach to PvE in Overwatch 2 and released a high-level roadmap for the year. We're really excited for everything we'll be launching soon, but much of the discussion this week has been about how we're cancelling PvE outright, which isn't accurate. So I want to take some time to discuss some of that with you here.
They're basically going to disassemble it and move it around.
The idea for the game was centered
smaller,
around
more modular parts of the
game we released last October, and on the PvE side, story missions and hero missions. Story missions focus on fast-paced, co-op gameplay, as well as story, cinematics, and cutscenes that expand the world of Overwatch. Story missions tell a linear narrative about the heroes of Overwatch reuniting and battling the new null sector threat, pushing the story of Overwatch forward for the first time since our original game released. These missions take place on huge maps with new enemies and new cinematics. We will begin to release them in Season 6. The work done here is amazing, leaps and bounds above what we've built for PvE previously in our game, and I can't wait for our players to get their hands on them. We'll be sharing more details there in the coming weeks. Hero missions, or hero mode, on the other hand, encompassed an in-development game mode that allowed players to upgrade individual heroes through talent trees, providing a deeply replayable version of PvE in Overwatch 2. It was a really exciting concept, something that not only resonated with players, but that the team was passionate about and really dedicated to. This is the mode we're no longer moving forward with.
That takes
to
a lot
give
of
you
effort.
some context for this change, I'd like to talk about the past and the origins of Team 4.
3 skill tiers, 3 separate tiers for each hero. There's a boatload of heroes, right? Or they have to make something generic, which if they made a generic tree just for like tank, DPS, and support, they probably could have done that and it would have been fine. But my guess is they tried to make an individual, like if they're playing World of Warcraft, they tried to make an individual talent tree for each character. If they just made a general tree, it would have cut down a lot of their work and it still would have meaningful impact on the game depending on what you're doing. And then you just do the same thing where you have separate skill tiers that are like something special. And you could even make the special item based on the character, or you could just make it something that's unique and impactful in the game. My guess is they tried to tackle this in a MMO sense where each character has its own, and there's like if you looked at it, each character has a skill tree. So yeah, my guess is they bit off more than they could chew.
Hero missions, or hero mode, on the other hand, encompassed an in-development game mode that allowed players to upgrade individual
I mean, if they have a
heroes
game
through
company
talent
working on,
trees,
maybe not.
providing a deeply replayable version of PvE in Overwatch 2. It was a really exciting concept, something that not only resonated with players, but that the team was passionate about and really dedicated to. This is the mode we're no longer moving forward with. To give you some context for this change, I'd like to talk about the past and the origins of Team 4. The Overwatch team was founded in the wake of a cancelled game at Blizzard called Project Titan. That game had many facets, but at its heart, it was an FPS MMO. The Overwatch team, especially...
There are only a handful of really good FPS MMOs, and I would even say that, maybe a couple, and most of which aren't even the same thing, like PlanetSide 2, Warframe, and then there's a game that was canceled. I actually think Warframe is third person. I don't think it's first person. It doesn't need to be first person, just an FPS or just a shooter, maybe more just a shooter MMO. They're very, very rare. Another one is called Tabula Rasa, which is from the 2000s, which I played. That was around for a year and a half before the company canned it because they were trying to target the World of Warcraft player base, and what it was essentially dynamic, not predictive. A dynamic modular campaign where you play across basically a world map, somewhat like PlanetSide 2, but at the same time, enemy forces, which were controlled by a computer, their AI, would push forward through it, and you had to go back and retake parts of the map and get rewards along the way. It was an MMO in terms of drops. It was actually really cool. You can find gameplay footage of it online. Very, very cool. Imagine having a co-op survivor shooter or Last Stand. So Last Stand shooter or horde, depending on what game you're talking about. Different game companies call it different things, like zombies, COD Zombies. Only you are playing it as an MMO character. It's actually really, really fucking cool. It was around for a year and a half, and they kept trying to target the World of Warcraft player base, and it basically sunk. It was, yeah. They had a successful game, in my opinion, but they shut off the servers anyways. There was a petition to get it to turn back on. They never did. That was NC Soft, I believe. Tried to get it back in play. There's only a handful of games that like fall under the MMO FPS umbrella. And as such, Destiny is an MMO FPS, right? But that's, I don't know, Destiny is not really a game I'd ever consider playing. Like, I'd rather play, like, Division. Division was alright. But, yeah, Destiny is too generic, it feels like.
The Overwatch team, especially at its inception, considered itself an MMO development team. As we transitioned away from that original concept and started creating Overwatch, we included plans to one day return to that scope. We had a crawl, walk, run plan. Overwatch was the crawl, a dedicated version of PvE was the walk, and an MMO was the run. It was built into the DNA of the team early on, and some of us considered that final game a true realization of the original vision of Project Titan.
I don't think what Overwatch was ever going to turn into an MMO in any way, shape, or form. Maybe they envisioned it that way, but yeah, no, maybe another franchise could use the characters and start over, but yeah. I could have never imagined Overwatch turning into an MMO. That being said, Heroes of Storm exists, and that's actually a pretty good MOBA, so, you know, but that's is like a different branch of Blizzard that did Heroes of Storm. I'm pretty sure there isn't really anyone working on it anymore. Someone occasionally changes the backdrop in the game. You can still play it. In my opinion, it's basically MOBA 2.0. It does what other MOBAs does, only does it better, which is why a lot of people hated it. I tried to stream it for a bit, but no one watches it, so.
We quickly started talking about what that next iteration could be. Looking back at that moment, it's now obvious that we weren't as focused as we should have been on a game that was a runaway hit. Instead, we stayed focused on a plan that was years old.
Yep.
Work began on the PvE portion.
So, kind of an important takeaway here. What I like bringing up is how Epic tackled their success in Fortnite, which is the moment they realized their Battle Royale was infinitely more popular than their Save the World Horde game, they pivoted, which is kind of weird because Blizzard was basically doing another horde game, right? Which was their MMO. Probably a horde. Actually, it's an MMO FPS. You don't know. You don't know if it was a horde game. But yeah, Save the World still exists, but it's like a pet project of the original company. And I guess that's what they wanted to do with Overwatch, kind of. But they didn't do what Fortnite did. Fortnite took all their resources and devoted it to growing Battle Royale, their Fortnite Battle Royale franchise, before they decided to, put a little bit back into Save the World when they could, because it was their pet peeve, it was their pet project. It was their guilty pleasure. It was the thing that they wanted to do because they're capable of doing it now. And Blizzard, I guess, didn't let go of that, and I guess they needed to. You'd think they're a big enough company where they could have done both because it's Blizzard, but I guess not.
When we launched Overwatch in 2016, we quickly started talking about what that next iteration could be. Looking back at that moment, it's now obvious that we weren't as focused. Things rarely go as planned in game development. We struggled to find our footing with the hero mission experience early on. Scope grew. We were trying to do too many things at once, and we lost
you have to
focus.
modularize.
The team built some really good...
I mentioned this before. I eventually wanted to make my own video game, but whether or not that's going to happen in my lifetime, probably not. But I basically have a manifesto that's almost a decade. Actually, I think it is a decade. It's more than a decade old at this point. Where basically I sat down and made up a game plan and layout of how I wanted to design a video game and stages that it would go through. I had broken up into 4 different stages, in which kind of what they did, but not really. In which basically each part of the stage was fully fleshed out, and it would add more and more and expand it. It's like, if you can imagine a tree just opening up. That's basically what it was. And I still have it, mind you. And it's like 30-some pages that I put together of how I wanted to design it, things I wanted to work on, different areas and scopes and things and orders that they had to be tackled on, like order of operations that they had to be tackled on. Because there's some things that have to go in front of other things, otherwise it fucks up stuff that's further along. Because it's stuff that the community demands. It's stuff that people, gamers, demand, that they want. Like content updates. They want new guns, they want new characters, they want new stuff that keeps the game feeling fresh, new maps, new buildings, new vehicles, things that will actually incentivize and kind of tweak that possibility in their mind of stuff that they can do in the game that they couldn't otherwise do before. It was basically a plan that was built on top of it, and different phases would expand the scope. Eventually, it was going to. I thought that not Starfield. Shit, what's the name of the game? Not SpaceX. The Kickstarter game. Motherfucker. Like, no one even plays it anymore, but it still exists. Star Citizen. There we go. I mean, everyone knows about Star Citizen. It's like one of the biggest blunders in history where they've just printed money and they haven't really done anything with it. They have a game. It exists. It's not fun to play. It's literally just a place to go show off your really expensive ship, which is funny in and of itself. Like, it's funny you can spend so much money and achieve so little in terms of, like, something people actually want to use or play or interact with. And that's what Star Citizen is. And people go, oh no, Star Citizen is a great game. No, it's not. No, it's not. People don't want to play it. It's not fun. People just go there to show off their Cadillac and then they're done. And I guess it accomplishes that. I thought Star Citizen was going to be the game that I wanted to make, and it wasn't. They basically it kind of sounded like they wanted to make it, and then it just went off to nowhere. And then like PlanetSide 2 kind of sounded like what I wanted to make, but it wasn't at all. Because it's more ground-based, there's no space element to it, and there's a lot of aspects of it just missing. Like, I want to make an MMO FPS. It's a little bit different. It's more like a 4X MMO FPS, if you can imagine that. Yeah, that was my intention. And that doesn't exist. No one has made that. I don't know if I haven't described it that way. But anyways, I have like a 30-page manifesto in which I decided, like, bulleted and split up certain parts of the game into certain phases in which they'd have to be tackled and stuff that would have to be finished before other things, because if you get too far ahead of yourself, you fuck yourself. That's the way it goes, because you don't have the not the elements, but the resources to accomplish what you need, either in terms of talent, development team, and as you grow as a person, company, you'll be able to attract more talent that will then realize that what you're working on, especially if they believe in what you're doing, then it becomes even bigger. Nowadays, there's a lot of things that are just involved with politics, which is unfortunate. Real life politics, like identity politics, that just fucks around with everything now and makes it more difficult to accomplish. You still could, but it's just like, it sounds an awful lot like We said at the beginning, they bit off more than they could chew, and like Fortnite was able to pivot and literally just balls deep on Battle Royale, and then they were able to come back to stuff that they wanted to work on later. And I guess Blizzard didn't, but like I said, they should have been able to do that. They're a big enough company, so what happened?
Things rarely go as planned in game development. We struggled to find our footing with the hero mission experience early on. Scope grew. We were trying to do too many things at once and we lost focus. The team built some really great things, including hero talents, new enemy units and early versions of missions, but we were never able to bring together all of the elements needed to ship a polished, cohesive experience.
Yeah, leadership does that.
We had an exciting but gargantuan vision and we were continuously pulling resources away from the live game in an attempt to realize it. I can't help but look back on our original ambitions for Overwatch and feel like we used the slogan of crawl, walk, run to continue to march forward with a strategy that just wasn't working.
I can't help but look back on our original ambitions and feel like we used the slogan that just wasn't working. Okay. I feel what? Just feel that it wasn't working. I can't help. This is like an incomplete sentence. I feel bad. In hindsight, I feel bad that we're working on a vision that was unsustainable. Kept reiterating it. This is like an incomplete thought. That's why I got stuck on it.
We had announced something audacious. Our players had high expectations for it, but we no longer felt like
they didn't even announce the MMO aspect
we
of
needed
this.
to make an incredibly difficult decision, one we knew would disappoint our players, the team, and everyone looking forward to hero missions. The Overwatch team understands this deeply. This represented years of work and emotional investment. They are wonderful, incredibly talented people and truly have a passion for our game and the work that they do. Lastly, people have wondered why this announcement came at this time. After Overwatch 2 had launched, we started refining our plans for future seasons. As those plans grew, we tried to find ways to make all of our ambitions fit together in a plan that we believed in.
Be in the same paragraph.
We couldn't, and we also knew that we couldn't go back to pulling people away from the live game in service of that original vision again. So, we made the difficult decision to cut hero missions and started planning for the future.
I guess it is Overwatch. We're gonna, I'll wait.
From there, we needed to update the vision for the game, gain confidence in our new direction and roll out the changes to the team. The decision was the start of a long process, not the final piece of it. This has been hard for us, but as the director on this project, I have to do my best to make decisions that put the game and the community first, even when those decisions are disappointing. In this case, I had trouble pivoting away from a vision that just wasn't working. And for that I would like to apologize to our players and to our team. I'm sorry.
Okay.
We are focusing our efforts and our passion into making this game an ever-evolving experience. We are still committed to building many of the elements we talked about at BlizzCon 2019, including the story missions that delve into the next chapter of the Overwatch universe, new types of co-op content we haven't yet shared, and new stories that we're planning to tell both in and out of the game. We're excited about this direction and we can't wait for you to finally get to experience what we've been building. Overwatch was born from the ashes of Project Titan. It was a moment of metamorphosis for the team and the project, and something beautiful came out of it. This is another moment of change. And the future of Overwatch will be born out of it.
I mean, that's what Overwatch was born. You're not rebirthing into Overwatch. Overwatch was already Overwatch, which was from Project Titan, I guess. Okay. Anyways, so the interesting part here was Overwatch was released. So Project Titan, he keeps talking about like Overwatch was supposed to be Project Titan. Overwatch came out 7 years ago, right? 2016, right? 2016. So arguably, this game plan was in place at the beginning of Overwatch that we were going to release PvE content and it's going to be Project Titan. We were going to rekindle this, right? Walk, run, crawl, whatever it was. We're going to rekindle this. So this isn't just 4 years. This isn't from Overwatch 2 when they started Overwatch 2. This isn't just 4 years of game development. This is longer than that. The question is, and what a lot of people are having problems grasping here, is how if you take into account since Overwatch 2 launched, or Overwatch launched, that's 7 years. You take into account since Overwatch 2 was brought into inception, they stopped content updates for Overwatch 1, that's 4 years. You throw out COVID, that's another year. There's 3 years of game development in which they had a dev team working on this, and they couldn't accomplish shit. So what is going, like, this is the problem that people are trying to grasp here is, from the outside looking in, you can go, oh, we had this grand vision, we were unable. This is basically, this is an apologize piece, exactly what I mentioned. This is an apologize piece, and they're certain they're going to recycle some of the content, the story missions, right? They have certain things that they're actually going to be capable of giving us in Overwatch 2, which I honestly don't really even give a shit about. This could be a completely separate game, like HOTS is a completely separate game from most things in the Blizzard universe, right? It exists, and it uses the stuff, and I'd say it's a great game, but it's not it's not Overwatch, right? It has Overwatch characters in it. Like, it's a completely separate team that was possibly, like they say, like Section 4 or whatever it was working on this. What did they do? They had 4 years, and 3 if you exclude COVID year, which, I mean, that's not a complete loss, but COVID year. And that's after they decided that they're going to change into Overwatch 2. They had 3 years, and longer than that if you include basically them trying to work on this from Overwatch 1, right? Where did they go? What did they do? What did they had a development team here that supposedly was working on an entire aspect of the game from, what was it? Team 4. I guess Team 4 was part of Blizzard. This is the bigger part of Blizzard. This is prior to Overwatch 1 launching. So it wasn't actually like the entirety of their, it isn't a separate part that was working on PvE. But they had a part of their company that was specifically working on it. And it's not like they don't have a small amount of people at Blizzard. They don't have a small amount of people that are working on Overwatch. They are a AAA company, which people joke about all the time. But you have, like, it's obvious that they were sacrificing certain parts of their game to work on this PvE element, but they didn't really do anything. Like, they have a cinematic, and we mentioned before, I'm pretty sure the cinematic is from a separate team. What were they like I mentioned before, like, I will eventually want to make a video game, hopefully in my lifetime, but it might never happen. But there's an order of operations in which you kind of like tackle stuff, right? And they just had everyone, it's like Valve, where everyone could just work on whatever they wanted. So they weren't actually trying to prioritize certain parts of the game to get it out the door first. I mean, they got Overwatch 1 out, and then they just stopped with Overwatch 1 to change to Overwatch 2, which I have no idea why. People try to say, oh, it's because of the loot, the battle pass. No, the loot boxes were in the game a lot longer than Overwatch 2 was announced. That was changing to Battle Pass was after. It was pretty straightforward that Fortnite was extremely successful with their Battle Pass system, and a lot of people were bitching about loot boxes, so then they shifted to it. That was definitely not why they made Overwatch 2. Why they made Overwatch 2 in the first place, I don't know. Like, it's supposed to be an evolution of the game, but then they just stopped updating the game, and a lot of people lost interest in the game while this was happening. I mentioned this, like, this is back when I first heard it announced, and I was still playing Overwatch 1. When I first heard that Overwatch 2 was announced, I was like, why? It's already the game that it's going to be, right? And Overwatch 2 is just another iteration of Overwatch 1. And Overwatch 1 changed multiple times during its live service. It wasn't just Overwatch 1 is a game and then Overwatch 2 is the new game. There's a bunch of iterations along the way in which a lot of things changed throughout Overwatch 1, including role kill was added, right? A lot of things changed throughout the game. And they decided that they had to make a second iteration of the game. Like, did they have to sell this to a CEO or something? I don't know. But anyways, the big deal here is where this went. Obviously, they're gonna bring some of us the content, like with story missions, right? With story missions, they're gonna bring some of us the content. And honestly, I don't even think like tying it all together wouldn't even be that difficult. It's not that hard. Like, a lot of games have story-based missions where you go into instance content, right? And then you just have a hub. That's pretty straightforward. Like, it doesn't need to actually be like a MMO like Destiny has a hub, right? Destiny has a hub. I don't know what Destiny 2 is like. Destiny has a hub. There's a lot of games, Vermintide, where they have a hub where people gather and they be social together, but then they go into doing like the instance content. And instance content in this case is story missions. Like this is pretty straightforward. Like a lot other games have done this. I don't know why they said that they couldn't bring it together. And like I said, the possibility is they tried to make a exclusive talent tree for each character, and there's ways they could have split it up, where they could have made a generic talent tree for everyone, or a talent tree for the DPS and for the supports and for the tanks, right? Each class would have one. That divvies up the work even more. And then if you wanted to make it even more special, you could make maybe certain tiers for a character have a unique item to them, or maybe even the last talent would be unique to that character, right? It would be a unique thing to that character. So there are ways of definitely making this much easier to integrate together with a city system, or I don't know, a city system, or with an instance area, just a gathering place where people get together. It could just still be in the client. Like they could literally just launch on the client, which is probably what they're going to do right now. Where you just group together and then you launch a custom game, or you just have a lobby where you join. There's just join screen. Vermintide is the same thing, where you join like a pregame lobby, right? And you just, before you get into the game, and everyone just readies up. I don't think this is really, I don't want to say it's that hard, but it definitely doesn't seem as hard as they made it out to be. So then it comes back. This is a AAA game company. It comes back to what they did for 4 years or 3 years if you exclude COVID. What did they do with their time? And this is once again why I said that I think work from home is part of it. And he said on Twitter, no, it's not work from home. That's nothing to do with it. But once again, the proof is in the pudding, where stuff doesn't get done. So people might like to think that, oh, it worked out fine with work from home, but then what? This feels like their game development for PvE stopped prior to COVID, and then it didn't restart after COVID. And that's a really fucking weird place to be. Like it feels like the game development for Overwatch 2 stopped when COVID happened for this PvE content, and then just never really restarted. And I don't know, like this Star Watch came out, and Star Watch was probably part of the PvE experience. Not very good. Not very good at all. And everyone's super excited and patting everyone on the back, probably because they're trying to not acknowledge the fact that they just released a turd. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really get it. And this is why, like a lot of people, as I mentioned before, like they aren't game developers, and there's a lot of people like, no, you can't think about this unless you're a game developer. No, fuck off. You can 100% look at this from the outside and see stuff didn't happen, and then go, what happened? You have however, can we figure out how many employees Overwatch has? How many employees does Overwatch have? Overwatch is 7,500 employees. This is Blizzard? Let's do Blizzard instead and see if this is just Blizzard. 9,500 employees. They aren't all working on... Maybe they are. 13,000. Statista. 2012, 4,700 employees. Obviously, these are working on a bunch of different games, and there are multiple that are going to take up time. Would be World of Warcraft is a significant amount of their budget, and Diablo 4 specifically. Does Overwatch have? I think they're confusing Overwatch with Blizzard. In 2016, there's 100 developers in Team 4. That's Project Titan. There's no way there's only 100 people working on Overwatch. Overwatch Imaging has 24 employees. That's a different company. 2 to 10 employees. $300 developers. 40 developers? No way. As of November 2022, there are over 300 developers on the team. The team was restructured during the development of Overwatch 2, and its size expanded in order to cover the development free-to-play game. Be a source. November 2022. There's no way there's like 12,000 people working at Blizzard, and only 200 or 300 are on the Overwatch 2 team. So nothing in here is... This is supposed to be a source for this number. There's nothing in here sourcing it. Or... It's the wrong source. 3. No. Yeah, so the first source doesn't have the number that it's citing. We increased the size to be 3 times bigger than it used to be, compared to when. Five. Total number... Thanks, Google. Old days we knew Overwatch had 40 devs. There's a lot more than 120 developers. I mean, that kind of makes sense with what we're getting if there's only 120 developers on it. How does Blizzard have 12,000 employees and only 120 developers for Overwatch? This is like Heroes of the Storm all over again? There's no sources for the number of players that are actually at Overwatch. 7,500, that's wrong too. Blizzard has 4,700 employees. 2012. I don't think you're gonna get a number here because they aren't a publicly traded company. I don't even think if they were a publicly traded company, they'd have to reveal that. Specifically vague about the number of employees that they have. So you can't make an apples comparison here about the amount of productivity they have compared to the number of employees that, let's see, how many employees work on Fortnite? 2,200. Number of employees, 2,200. That's everyone. 700. That's 2018. 3,700. 2016. They had 2,200 employees in 2016. That's when the game took off. Epic Games employs approximately 1,000 people. Oh yeah? Fortnite devs are reportedly working 100-hour weeks. Yeah, and they were making bank while doing it. Yep, that's when they were during crunch, and they were definitely well rewarded for working. That was not like slave labor. And they had a choice of just leaving the company, which some people did. That was crunch time, they had to get her done, and they did. Which is why Fortnite is as amazing as it is today. Anyway, so there's no source for this number of employees where it says 300. This is just a number out of someone's asshole. And apparently at one point there were 40 employees working on Project Titan, and I guess it could also be 120, so yeah. Oh. No, so this is Team 4, which was Project Titan. In November 2022, which Project Titan doesn't exist anymore, it says 300. This is for Team 4. Overwatch 2. Yeah, I don't believe there's only 300 people there. No way. Maybe. I don't know. This number is just made up. They said 3 times the size, and I guess someone somewhere picked out 100 employees to use this 3x number on. This isn't a quote from anyone. Team 1 working on classic games such as World of Warcraft 3 Reforged and Heroes of the Storm. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if T1 doesn't exist right now. Uh-huh. I guess we won't be able to figure that one out, guys. But yeah, this just like kind of going back here, rewinding a bit. People are wondering what the fuck they were doing for 4 years for the PvE content and where it went. Because that's basically what it comes down to. If you're sacrificing time and manpower to do something, then you just don't do it. What were you doing for those 4 years? That's sort of ordeal. Blizzard tends to move slower in general. A lot of games took forever to come out, right? But yeah, it basically comes down to what we were getting versus where basically the development team was, and then people are wondering why there's this disconnect between essentially people spending time doing something or nothing, and then what we were seeing from it. Which is why I said work from home wasn't working, because it definitely seems like the stuff that they spit out today, like they're going to be putting out into the roadmap, reminds me an awful lot of probably where the game, it feels like what you would have gotten 2 years ago, like basically when COVID started, is very similar. And that was 2 years after Overwatch 2 development started, which was 3 years after the launch of Overwatch 1. Yeah, I don't know. It's still, you can say what you want. We had a vision, whatever, and we just kept trying to work on it. That's just kind of an excuse. It's an apology for what happened. But what people are really interested in is why nothing happened at all. That's kind of what it came out to. And you can say, oh, there's a couple story missions that we're going to get, and that's true. Uh, but if you couldn't just make a town center with like a landing pad, I don't know. You can't make a town center with a landing pad where people can just walk around and talk to each other or whatever. Just like and maybe some reforging or something, and then make your talent trees. There's a lot of compromises you could have made to make this work out, and relatively easily from the looks of it, and they didn't. So take a look at Reddit's here. Trust us, notorious liars. Another one. Oh, Vermintide wrong. I think there's an H in there. Bureaucracy. Bureaucracy. Holy shit, I spelled it right. No way. I'm getting old. Did I spell it right? I totally spelled it right. Bureaucracy at its finest. Done. This is late. 14 hours. Tough to actually get any upvotes at that point. Well, calling the question their validity, reputation. How can we believe you? You don't need to believe them. Just look at whatever comes out. No, like, are you playing Overwatch because of promises? Like, what are you doing with your time? You don't need to play the game if you're not enjoying it. Just because someone's promising you things doesn't mean you need to play the game. You know, it'd be really helpful your actual PvE gameplay on what they're planning to add to the game, but there hasn't been any because they likely don't have the clips being done. Yeah, it's the same with crypto mining. If you aren't actually seeing proof of something, it doesn't exist. It's the same shit. If they had something to show off, they would 100% show it off. You're like, holy shit, guys, look how good this is. They don't. It's like Star Watch. There's a reason I'm not convinced they will release anything. This is the fucking weird thing, is they had a dedicated part of the development team working on PvE, yet they didn't produce anything? What happened? Good evening, Edwin. We had to cover the update from Dead by Daylight. There's a new anniversary update, which I'm going to put into a YouTube video, and then also we are now discussing the apology piece from Blizzard. Yeah, there's some really big content releases today, so we had to take a look at them. Turn into content for my channel. We've already proven that if you want to enjoy PvE experience more than once, you need stuff like talent trees or whatever, or make it progressive in the game. Like League of Legends, for instance, doesn't really have a talent tree. I mean, it does kind of have a talent tree outside the game with like runes. I don't even know if League of Legends still has runes outside of the game. But for the most part, you play League of Legends in and of itself. Each game is progression, right? You progress through the game. They could do the same thing. Man vs. Machine with Team Fortress 2 was the same way. They don't actually need to make it where you have continual progression. It doesn't need to be an MMO. That's like the eventuality is it has to be an MMO, which is what the point they're taking. You don't. They don't need to do that. There's other games that don't do that, and they work out fine. You do not need to do that. You can just make it in of itself, and then give new ways that people can expand throughout the game, and then it makes them feel like you're becoming more powerful throughout the game itself. They don't need to do that. It doesn't need to be an MMO. There's plenty of games that are like somewhere in between an MMO and an actual, just a first-person shooter. Back in my day. Doing events for loot boxes. So you don't need to do... That's like the fucking weird thing. Some people seem to think that if they're playing a game, they need to get a reward for doing it. You can actually have fun playing a game. People play Counter-Strike. Yeah. They don't get any rewards for that. They get boxes that they can then buy keys for to gamble away their money. So, yeah, there's that. Technically, WoW had that, or excuse me, Overwatch had that, and then everyone's like, think of the kids. They're gambling. And then they got rid of them and replaced them with the Battle Pass. Because that's what they wanted. Yeah, but apparently the community is doesn't remember what they used to want, so... 4 years is Elden Ring's development size gap, and you're telling me that this is what they have now launched. Yep. Just the talent system alone looks like you get a ton of work considering each hero to have 35 to 40 talents. Yep, I already addressed that. Always out of the curve, guys. Which is you make a generic one for each class. And then even if that doesn't work, you make a generic one for everything. If you don't have enough time. Best move to me would have just been dramatically reduce the number of heroes available from PvE, launch 2 tanks 3, but you don't need to do that. That doesn't need to have it doesn't need a talent tree for each hero. Channel players was coming. Boger was so right, dropping this bomb and then trying to hype us up with the roadmap. Graphic was catastrophic. Yeah, they should have introduced the roadmap first, and then later... They didn't even need to talk about PvE not coming. They just later address it months later after you're finally getting the content. Because they didn't need to actually talk about PvE dying. They didn't need to say it. And when people ask, eventually they would say the PvE content is in the maps you're getting. And I'd be like, oh, and then they might be angry, but then they've already played it, enjoyed it, or not enjoyed it. So. That was definitely mishandled. Talking about personal health, don't care. You aren't capable of being in a position where you have to make hard choices and your hair falls out. Don't be in that position. You took a promotion that entails responsibilities that you're now responsible for. I don't feel bad for people that are now in a position of power that have to take on the responsibilities of being in that position of power. Because they decided to take the promotion. They didn't need to take the promotion. They took the promotion. So, yeah. And you can say, oh, no, they're definitely going to take the promotion. Everyone would, right? Yeah, but you are a person. You make your own choices. So, personal responsibility is a thing. People are responsible for making their own choices. Well, for some reason in the U.S., it is now very common for people to not have any personal responsibility. I think it's everyone else's problem that they're having problems. Fucking weird. Weird shit, like they aren't responsible for their lives at all. I don't know why. I think it has a lot to do with liability and shit. Don't do it. You don't need to take the promotion. You don't need to take the job. Like when it was announced that Twitter is a fun place, guys. I've been experimenting with Twitter and going into places that I shouldn't be. For instance, going into other people's echo chambers. So you can understand what kind of... So initially, the way that it works is people follow someone they generally agree with, right? Likes are generally... They aren't a rightness. They are not an indicator of rightness. Likes a metric of agreeability. It's how much someone agrees with you. It's not necessarily a metric of how right you are. It's just whether or not someone agrees with you. Agreeability can come from a lot of different things. It's mainly a bias, right? So someone will be followed by basically their underlings that agree with whatever they say. This guy will continue to keep posting the same stuff because that's what he's built off. His brand name's built off of whatever these guys are yes-manning to, right? So whenever you go into this person's echo chamber, you're just going to have a bunch of people that if you disagree with this person, you're not going to get upvotes because the people looking at it are the people that want to agree with whoever the opening post is. So immediately you have things that are working against you, right? Yeah. Just fucking weird. I forgot what the fuck... Where the fuck was I going with that? Fucking echo chamber. There was a tangent. There was a point I was trying to make. Fuck. I went too deep, and then I lost my original point. Oh, anyways, like, you don't need to take the job. So, at the end of the day, like, liability, that's where it was. Liability. Yeah. You don't need to take the job. And if someone can't handle the job, they can, they can retire. They can move on. Kaplan moved on. Kaplan was losing his hair, but he generally seemed like he actually wanted to do the game good, right? And then it seems like the new guy took the job specifically because it was an upgrade for him. And now he realized he couldn't actually handle the job, and now we're at the scenario we're in right now. Like, you literally have to whip people and tell them what to do. Metaphorically, whip people and tell them what to do. Or berate them verbally. Depends on how you do things in your office place. People do a lot of different ways to encourage people to do work. But if people aren't doing work, they aren't doing work, and they have to move on with their lives at that point. Whatever work that is that they're working on. Seems an awful lot like they need a strong hand to tell people to get to work, and they didn't do it. Probably had a lot to do with the lawsuit and people being overly conscious. You could tell basically on all the yes men and people patting each other on the back and stroking each other off in the dev commentary now about how great we are as a dev team when they aren't. That there's a lot of positivity that's supposed to be there when in fact they aren't accomplishing what they're supposed to. Like, they're just kind of just trying to pretend that they're doing really well when they aren't, because then people feel bad when they aren't doing well, and that's not where you want to be. People actually are partially responsible for what's going on in the company, and if someone's not productive, they need to get productive, and that's a thing, right? Productivity is actually a thing. That's where the MBAs come in and start firing people because they aren't doing what they're supposed to. And apparently they can't anymore. I don't know, but it seems that way, where stuff wasn't getting done, and they just didn't fire the people. So, and they didn't tell them to get back to work, or they couldn't do it remotely, and they apparently can't get people to get back into the office because they're obviously very productive when they're outside the office based on what's going on here. Yeah, I don't know. And it's a cold thing to say. It's a company. It's not, I mean, Twitter was, Musk shed like, what, 2/3 of the company? Yeah, because they weren't doing shit. They're literally, going from their juice bar to their sushi rotational sushi place to their facial cleanse to their meditation room. And like, if you read about all the weird shit and that's happening in Twitter prior to Musk taking over, like the personal accounts of how awesome it is to work there, basically it sounded like they didn't do anything for like 4/5 of the day. They didn't do anything at all. Yeah, it's utopia. Yeah, this isn't even unobtainable. They just weren't realistic with what they're not realistic. They just didn't try to manifest what they're trying to make. There's a bunch of people that are just fucking off and they didn't care. Massive news is something a little more interview just reeks of trying to hide and not take accountability for broken promises. Well, I mean, he can't. He's the lead developer. He can only say sorry so much. There's really a bunch of other people that aren't getting shit done that need to be fired is basically what it comes down to. There's definitely probably dead weight on their team and they can't get rid of them. Or they don't want to get rid of them, or they don't see them as dead weight because they're part of the team and they're a family. Which would make things even worse is when it turns from a job into a family and you actually have to make a meaningful product. Like, that's probably why nothing gets done at Valve, is because everyone knows everyone. And I mean, Valve is a unique case in and of itself because it doesn't need to be profitable because they have Steam. Steam basically feeds them money. My dad always said if you provide bad news to your boss or customer, you better come with a solution and you show them something. We got a JPEG. Well, that's why you don't give them bad news. You just don't give it to them at all, and you wait for the solution to show itself, which was the game modes, and then maybe later divulge that you transformed it into that, because that's what they're doing, right? But I guess they did it in the wrong way, and that's definitely true. It's a horrible line to end on, taking something inspirational and turning into something mundane and expected. Through our hard work on this game, we will get the bare minimum of your expectations done, probably, maybe. Yeah, Titan that ship sailed 7 years ago. He tried to spin that into this being a dream of Project Titan that was Overwatch 1, so past that point. Yeah, they didn't explain anything in the roadmap. I mentioned that on the release day. When we looked at that, they didn't explain anything. Which usually means that it's not far along in development. Fun fact, Project Titan has now been canceled twice. See, you guys, the problem was that they all just cared too much, yeah, but weren't willing apparently to sacrifice anything to do it. I've sacrificed a lot, and then why was nothing done? Why did nothing get done? That's the real kicker, is how they... Like I said, it feels like where they are with PvE for Overwatch 2 was prior to COVID. COVID happened, and then just nothing got done after COVID happened, which included, obviously, COVID was hysteria, but then on top of it, they had a year after COVID was basically done, which was 2022, in which they didn't do really anything. So... yeah, like what I would imagine for Overwatch was basically what happened prior to Overwatch 2. So, yeah. Let's be real, the vast majority of us have been happy of updating Overwatch 1. I mean, that was what they should have done. There's nothing being happy with. Gaslighting is insane. I wouldn't say there's gaslighting. It's, an apology piece. It's not really gaslighting. Like, they aren't really manipulating you and denying your reality at all. They're just making up excuses. That's not gaslighting. This is overused. In this case, I wouldn't say it's gaslighting. People do gaslight a lot. I don't think this is gaslighting. This is an apology piece. Or the guy's just apologizing and saying why he's thinking what he did. They have so much to give that they gave nothing instead. This article's not worth reading if you kept up with the whole saga. No new info, tiny apology. Yep. Yeah, it's like fucking Twitter. I don't think they know what they're doing anymore. Just they aren't getting shit done. That's probably why work from home ended, which was an up top decision because no one in the company could make it for people. Because no one wants to be the bad guy and say work from home should end. I mean, Overwatch 1 was pretty much on spot with their production and what they were doing when they're spitting out content. Prior to what they decided to go to Overwatch 2, the 3 years after Overwatch 1 launched, and they were putting out new heroes relatively frequently, new maps, and like seasonal events. It was pretty much on spot, right? Yeah, and then they decided they're going to do Overwatch 2, and that was it. And it felt like this is, like I said, there is definitely an extra bit of padding, even if you think 2 years. This is 2 years of development work, so basically COVID's out. And then after COVID's out, which is 2022, this is basically 2 years of work, essentially, that came out of this, and that's being very generous. 2 years of work for basically a couple mods. Yeah, come on. For a AAA game company. This would be a much easier pill to swallow if they hadn't changed Overwatch was with an aggressive new monetization. They changed it because people are bitching. I'm gonna stipulate that that's not gonna be popular. Yeah, I mean, I didn't have anything against loot boxes. If fucking kids are getting money to gamble with in the first place, I have no idea how they're doing that. So, yeah. I mean, you aren't bankrupting kids. That's kind of the weird thing is you're teaching kids how to gamble, but not really because the access to money is generally gated by their parents, right? You aren't really bankrupting kids by having loot boxes in the game. What they can spend money on is almost always gated by their parents, either because they don't have access to money or they have to get money somehow. Who decided to break this announcement with the news? Yeah, decided to break the disappointment with the news release. Yeah, they didn't even need to talk about it. They could have just released the roadmap and then eventually talked about it a couple months down the road when stuff's getting released. Not sure what you might mean. I've never had problems buying the battle pass. That's Overwatch 2 is, right? Yep. Ironically, season 4 had so many bugs with the store not giving you fake queue number. Okay, whatever. Fuck off. Small bug. Oh no, that's why it's terrible. Battle Pass is terrible because there's a bug with it at one point. They butchered what Overwatch was, and now they're trying to save face. Pretty much. Yeah, I don't know. Keller, whatever his name is, definitely couldn't keep things together. He got he took a promotion and then was unable to make hard choices, apparently, which fucked everything. And, I mean, obviously the employees are part of the problem, but he's supposed to be the leadership, right? So, he can say sorry all he wants, but he basically... Yeah, right. Keller can say what he wants, but truth is they're happy doing the bare minimum, even if it means disappointing and lying to their customers. Their employees are happy doing the bare minimum. It was his job to whip them into shape and get them to do what they were, or they get fired. I don't know, maybe Kaplan had hard discussions there with some of the employees, but maybe they can't have hard discussions anymore after the lawsuits. Maybe they can't have hard discussions with their employees anymore where they have to do work or they get fired. So now they're basically in a case where if you guys watch Silicon Valley, is a fantastic series, guys. You should really watch it. There's a case in Silicon Valley. There's a case in Silicon Valley where there's Huey. Huey? It's not the company in real life. Huey or whoever it is. There's a company in real life. And one of the employees that they basically bought out was called Big Head. And he is absolutely terrible, but he had access to IP. They bought him out, and they put him on his dev team, and he actually just started ruining shit. So what they basically did was they employed him, and they couldn't fire him, and they just sat him on a rooftop with basically a bunch of people they couldn't fire that did nothing. Yeah, because they were detrimental to the actual development team. They were actually hurting the development team by existing. So that what they did was segment them and put them in a box because they couldn't fire them. That sounds heartbreaking. It's actually really Silicon Valley is fucking hilarious. Old series, and it got kind of shitty, long in the tooth towards the end of it, but yeah, it actually put into perspective some really interesting concepts of what you need to do in a business sometimes. And Gavin, I think his name was, basically took this guy that was a liability and just put him in a box. Basically, they put him. They basically had access to. Basically, they got paid to do nothing because having them do something was worse than them doing nothing. So, at the end of the day, when all is said and done, you still have the option of boxing people up and putting them off somewhere. They don't need to be part of whatever you're doing. You literally just remove them from the problem because they aren't helping. And it sucks. It's heartbreaking. But yeah, if you have people that are incapable of what they're doing and you can't fire them, you put them in a box somewhere on a rooftop and they drink their free Slurpees all they want and they do nothing because they're a waste of space. That's just the way it is. And you hire someone else. You basically pay two people, probably because they had to hire someone that checks some boxes. You basically pay two people, and one of which isn't going to do anything. Because you have to hire them, apparently, or you can't fire them, one of the two, and then you realize that you're stuck with basically the shit show that is. So, yeah, and Keller apparently couldn't do either. He couldn't box them, and he couldn't fire them. And so he was stuck with them, and yeah, it was probably because he didn't want to make a hard choice, which means he probably shouldn't have been in a leadership position at Overwatch in the first place. And Kaplan maybe got, I don't know, it's like this all, I'm surprised almost no one is mentioning Kaplan here, but it seems like Kaplan probably caught whiff of this or knew things were going wrong. My guess, as I mentioned in my post, was that there were too many people, there are too many captains and not enough sailors, there are too many queen bees and not enough workers, too many chiefs and not enough Indians, there's a lot Native Americans, there's a lot, I guess they could be, no, too many chiefs, not enough Native Americans. There you go. There's a lot of idioms for it over time because it is actually a real problem in real life that needs solutions sometimes, where you have too many people that are trying to control things and it pulls it every which way. Games, tons of games, it's happened in tons of games where it gets pulled in so many different directions, it falls apart because someone needs to keep everything together, and people need to know that there is a hierarchy where they're supposed to do what this person wants. Of course, you take feedback. Of course, you take the input from other developers. But at the end of the day, it's really up to one person or a couple people's firm vision, which aligns with each other where they want to go with things, right? A firm vision of where you want to take things. And if not everyone's in the same place, it just... World of Warcraft Shadowlands was that way. Dragonflight was pretty good. Shadowlands, which was the expansion during COVID... What even happened? I don't know. They just went in so... There's like... They had like 6 maybe separate development teams. It felt like just in separate places. The zones were so different in terms of quality. Like Maldraxxus. I still talked about this a lot on stream, and people bitched about me for talking about it. Maldraxxus? Absolutely terrible. Absolutely fucking horrible. And then you have... What was it? Not the Shadow Realm. There's like the vampire area, which looked really fucking cool. It had high quality of quality of assets, but it made no sense in terms of the actual area that they're in the afterlife. And then you had the Kyrian area, which are the Night Elf and the Kyrian areas were pretty well done. But like you had this like weird ass vampire zone, and it didn't really match anything at all in the game. It's like they put fucking Twilight into the game. What? And then, like, Maldraxxus was just, like, the shitty Burning Crusade area. It literally had the same development, the quality of life development. It's like everyone on the dev team said, we're just going to go our separate ways and we're going to do what we want. And it showed in the end game. And it was all very poorly tied together. Because that's what they ended up with. They still made a game, and it still popped out, but they ended up with something in which they were very different. Their people were on very different planes. And I'd say the ones that actually kind of made sense were the Kyrian area, which was like a typical Angels area, and then the Night Elf area, which was like a World Tree-ish kind of area, an afterlife for Night Elves. Yeah. And then you had the fucking vampire area, and then you had the Burning Crusade area, and then you had like the zone with the jailer and shit where you did all your quests in it, which was also basically on the same level of design as the Maldraxxus area, which was terrible. But that's just kind of like the most recent example. This is a tale as old as time itself, where basically a bunch of people pulled things apart because they want to make a mark on the world, right? And they realize when you do that, you just rip everything apart because people need to be on the same area. And Keller, I don't know how much actual power he has at the company, but he should have been able to either fire these guys or box these guys like we're talking about, and he didn't. So this is definitely his fault at the same time. And maybe Kaplan, maybe this kind of shows you how little power the lead developer actually has, because Kaplan left. So he probably found out that there's problems that he couldn't get rid of, and then he left the company. This is all hypothetical, mind you, because no one has actually said this. So keep in mind that I am going off the information that's available and making a hypothesis on what's actually going on based on everything else that's happening around in game companies and around in industry in general, right? So, yeah. The employees were happy doing the bare minimum, and he couldn't call them on their shit. And instead of leaving, he just went along with it, and that's going to adversely affect his career. He could have left prior to shit hitting the fan, like Kaplan did, and probably been in a better position. So he chose not to leave, he chose not to fire employees, and he chose not to box them. And he ended up with whatever the fuck this is. And it really does kind of make you wonder if there were employees there that just didn't want to, they didn't want to play game. Because if you look at the blog, the video, the development information from Starwatch, right? If you look at the information from Starwatch, those developers, they genuinely seemed like they thought they made something good. I don't know, maybe they took their Xanax that day, but the sound guy definitely seemed like he was kind of like, yeah, this is a piece of shit, but I'm still going to be here and talk about it and be happy. But the other three people legitimately seemed like they were on Xanax or something when they're talking about it. I don't know what's going on there. Like, we're just happy to be here. I'm happy to be on the development team, and we made something great. And no, they didn't. They made a piece of shit. So, yeah. And then they thought that they made something good. I don't know, maybe got pushed out the door early. But in general, it just didn't seem like they made anything good. They like went on their own way and made something, and they did a thing, and it just wasn't remotely reflective of a AAA game company, let alone Blizzard. And maybe this has a lot to do with internal internal politics at Blizzard, it really feels like some people should be fired here. To be perfectly honest with what's going on here, it feels like this is more than just oopsie, we didn't get it done sort of ordeal. We missed the deadline. This feels like there's major malfunctions that are happening at Overwatch right now, and they need to, whoever is above Overwatch needs to restructure their team in a way that actually gets shit done. And I know that's not going to be a popular opinion, because think of the workers sort of thing, but I don't know. I think we are living in a world right now where people are so used to just like, you know, being accommodated for that they aren't being asked anything of, or very little of, because people have to watch out for their mental health and for how they're living their life. And people pick the jobs that they take. It's not like oh, so I think the tangent, I just remember the tangent is going on. You don't need to take the job. Musk announced that he was stepping down as a Twitter CEO, which basically means he's going to have another person there that's going to take on the responsibility, basically the busy work that he had. He's going to still be a CTO, which means he's still going to change stuff in a way that everyone's going to reject and get angry about. But he is a CEO. And one of the posts that I read on Twitter was a woman that said that, I have to specify a woman that said that Musk, it's called a glass, not a glass ceiling, a glass floor, I think it is. So Musk is setting up a woman for failure because she's getting into an impossible situation in which she will not be capable of fixing. And the problem with that is because it removes all responsibility from the person being hired. If you, like the Keller, took on the position that Kaplan did, she is a grown adult. Whoever, they announced the actual name of the CEO of Twitter. I forgot her name already, but she's already announced. She took the job. She is a human being that can make, assumedly, critical decisions, especially if she's controlling a company, critical decisions for herself, especially with risk and reward, because she is in a position of a CEO. So if that person can't be responsible, if they can't be responsible for making a choice of taking on, they know what they're getting into. It's not like they just came out of a empty room, you know, with nothing in it, and they have no idea what's happening on Twitter. They took on the job to be a CEO of Twitter. That's what they chose to do. Kaplan retired, and Keller took on the position of Kaplan. He knew what he was getting into. He was part of the company. He knew what was there prior to him joining this. So there is personal responsibility. It is what they chose to do. Keller chose to take on this position, and he should have known that he has a bunch of shit that apparently he needed to clean up, and he didn't do so. So I don't know. Like, Keller can say sorry all he wants, but he can't box, he can't fire, he can't, and he can't get everyone on the same page. So what is he even doing? What exactly is he doing? He's just apologizing? Like, he's just there to get it up the ass when things go wrong? Does he actually, like I mentioned, I'm pretty sure Kaplan left because he had no power, and this is probably where Keller is now, where he has to deal with this, and yeah, he just couldn't make the kids play ball. And here we are, and instead of mentioning that the kids aren't playing ball, which would probably get super fucking messy, or basically going up to whoever is shoehorning them, like, I don't know, people definitely need to be fired here. There are problems at their company that aren't being solved through talking, because apparently they've had 4 years of that, and all we got is what's happening in the roadmap, which is pretty sad, to be perfectly honest, from a AAA game company. Nothing got done. And the people that pulled work from home appear to be the execs at ActiveBliz, so they basically are already looking at this and going, this isn't working, and they're trying to fix it. And they did that without firing people, or maybe people are getting fired and you're just not hearing about it. But yeah, this isn't working, so that's just the end result. Is like, you can go, proof is always in the pudding, and it's kind of, you know, people have circumstances that happen in their life, but when you're talking about like 2 years of circumstances or 4 years of circumstances, maybe you gave a little bit too much benefit of the doubt sort of ordeal, right? Maybe there's a little bit too much leeway, too much slack was given for people's personal responsibility, and to the point of which they didn't get anything done. Anyways, moving on. They failed by being overly ambitious. That sounds just, that is a very convenient excuse. Was we wanted to be Titan and we tried to make it Titan and we couldn't. No, Titan ship sailed with Overwatch 1. That excuse still with Overwatch 1. Everyone knows the Titan story. Read the whole thing, that's a lot of words for a whole lot of nothing. Nah, you didn't have Charles. First sentence is the whole thing, we put the community in game first. I'm still playing it. It's fun. I mean, if it wasn't remotely... Like I said, there's only so much you can stream on Twitch. Like, this is me making compromises. There is only so many games that I can play. It comes down to basically what I can play is Apex, Fortnite, or Overwatch. And I'm not playing Warzone, because Warzone's kind of terrible, especially with controllers. So we have 3 games to choose from here. And there's Dead by Daylight I guess I could go back to. But I'd rather play first-person shooter because it's more engaging. Even Overwatch is on the 4th... Overwatch is on the 4th page. Oh my god. There's 3 games to choose here. I'm not playing Counter-Strike or Counter-Strike Knockoff, which is Valorant. World of Warcraft, like, we went through these yesterday. World of Warcraft wants no-lifers that only play World of Warcraft. Rust is just popping because drops right now. GTA is roleplay. Street Fighter is just popping because it's new. Hearthstone's a card game. Not really interested. Slots? I could play slots, I guess. Waste a bunch of money that I don't have. Yeah, maybe I should play playing slots. Maybe I should gamble. Well, I mean, that's... You can see how many people are... How many viewers are getting. That's what the little viewership thing is. We went down through each... You can't just play it for a little bit. So in order for you to actually play a game, you have to develop a community through the game. With my stint in... I mean, in Dead by Daylight, we had some new people that came and just wanted to watch me play Dead by Daylight. That was kind of interesting, but with, like, Return to Overwatch, I didn't really have many people that want to watch me play Overwatch at all. So, viewership went up, but also, yeah, no new regulars for the most part, just more of the same. That's why I was talking about streaming to other websites, because at the end of the day, I think Twitch is oversaturated, especially at this time of day. I need to stream earlier. I definitely need to stream earlier. I think the, like, 12 to 4 is the worst time, maybe 1 to 5 is the worst time to stream on Twitch, so, and I'm doing it. Anyways, back to Overwatch, yeah, so, nothing but truth, lies and half-truths. I think it's fitting to say Overwatch 2 PvE is cancelled. It's been, what little they had was rolled into the game. And I don't even know why they couldn't make a fucking hub. That's the really weird thing, is if they have these story modes basically done and they couldn't make a hub, what does that mean? It's not hard. Vermintide, which is a standalone game, has a hub. You just have a little building with people that can walk through and look at shit, right? And see little trophies. Blog has been wound up. Yeah, it's just an apology piece. All he was saying sorry. The whole thing was sorry. I wanted to make a dream and I couldn't. Yeah, and it didn't. There's no blame to be had. They didn't talk about what went wrong. Besides, I had a dream and I couldn't do it. Dollar store Jeff. They didn't even talk about resources. They have the resources to properly do PvE or PvP. They didn't even talk about resources. They didn't talk about not having enough developers or people not doing their work. They didn't say anything. There's no blame at all. He just said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I am the one that did things wrong. Hate me. And that's basically it. Convinced the devs deleted all the original ideas PvE. No, they just didn't do them. They just didn't make anything. Because they couldn't monetize it? No. The skins sell themselves. Gaslighting? It's not gaslighting, it's an apology piece. There's no gaslighting in here. People apparently don't know what apologies are anymore.